Okay, continuing with the 21st chapter of A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court. The pigs have been dispensed with, given to the servants of the house that they stayed in, but Sandy has decided to stay with our hero, and they have joined a group of traveling pilgrims who are going to a place where a spring magically appeared but then disappeared when the monks used it to make a bath with. This is the story Sandy is telling, and this is our narrator's first interruption. They fared mildly, Sandy, considering how that kind of crime is regarded in this country. Belike, but it was their first sin, and they had been of perfect life for long, and differing in naught from the angels. Prayers, tears, torrings of the flesh, all was vain to beguile that water to flow again. Even processions, even burnt offerings, even votive candles to the Virgin, did fail every each of them, and all the land did marvel. How odd to find that even this industry has its financial panics, and at times sees its assignats and greenbacks languish to zero, and everything come to a standstill. Go on, Sandy. And so, upon a time, after year and day and good abbot made humble surrender and destroyed the bath, and behold, his anger was in that moment appeased, and the waters gushed richly forth again, and even unto this day they have not ceased to flow in that generous measure. Then I take it nobody has washed since. He that would essay it could have his halter free, yes, and swiftly would he need it too. The community has prospered since. Even from that very day the fame of the miracle went abroad into all lands. From every land came monks to join. They came to even as the fishes come in shoals, and the monastery added building to building, and yet others to these, and so spread wide its arms, and took them in, and nuns came also, and more again, and yet more, and built over against the monastery on yon side of the vale, and added building to building, until mighty was that nunnery. And these were friendly unto those, and they joined their loving labours together, and together they built a fair great foundling asylum midway of the valley between. You spoke of some hermits, Sandy. These have gathered there from the ends of the earth. A hermit thriveth best, where there be multitudes of pilgrims. Ye shall not find no hermit of no sort wanting. If any shall mention a hermit of a kind he thinketh new, and not to be found but in some far strange land, let him but scratch among the holes and caves and swamps that line that valley of holiness, and whatsoever be his breed it skills not, he shall find a sample of it there. I closed up alongside of a burly fellow, with a fat, good-humoured face, proposing to make myself agreeable and pick up some further crumbs of fact, but I had hardly more than scraped acquaintance with him than he began eagerly and awkwardly to lead up the immemorial way to that same old anecdote, the one Sir Dinadan told me, what time I got into trouble with Sir Sagramore, and was challenged of him on account of it. I excused myself, and dropped to the rear of the procession, sad at heart, willing to go hence from this troubled life, this vale of tears, this brief day of broken rest, of cloud and storm, of weary struggle, of monotonous defeat, and yet shrinking from the change, and remembering how long eternity is, and how many have wended thither who know that anecdote. Early in the afternoon we overtook another procession of pilgrims, but in this one no merriment, no jokes, no laughter, no playful ways, nor any happy giddiness, whether of youth or age. Yet both were here, both age and youth, grey old men and women, strong men and women of middle age, young husbands, young wives, little boys and girls, and 3 babies at the breast. Even the children were smileless. There was not a face among all these 100 people but was cast down, and bore that set expression of hopelessness which is bred of long and hard trials and old acquaintances with despair. They were slaves, chains led from their fettered feet and their manacled hands to a sole-leather belt about their waists, and all, except the children, were also linked together in a file 6 feet apart, by a single chain which led from collar to collar, all down the line. They were on foot and had tramped 300 miles in 18 days upon the cheapest odds and ends of food, and stingy rations of that. They had slept in these chains every night, bundled together like swine. They had upon their bodies some poor rags, but they could not be said to be clothed. Their irons had chafed their skin from their ankles and made sores which were ulcerated and wormy. Their naked feet were torn, and none walked without a limp. Originally there had been 100 of these unfortunates, but about half had been sold on the trip. The trader in charge of them rode a horse and carried a whip with a short handle, and a long, heavy lash divided into several knotted tails at the end. With this whip he cut the shoulders of any that tottered from weariness and pain, and straightened them up. He did not speak. The whip conveyed his desire without that. None of these poor creatures looked up as we rode along by. They showed no consciousness of our presence, and they made no sound but one. That was the dull and awful clank of their chains from end to end, of the long file, as 43 burdened feet rose and fell in unison. The file moved in a cloud of its own making. All these faces were gray with a coating of dust. One has seen the like of this coating upon furniture in unoccupied houses, and has written his idle thought in it with his finger. I was reminded of this when I noticed the faces of some of these women, young mothers carrying babes that were near to death and freedom. How a something in their hearts was written in the dust upon their faces, plain to see, and Lord, how plain to read, for it was the track of tears. One of these young mothers was but a girl, and it hurt me to the heart to read that writing and reflect that it was come up out of the breast of such a child, a breast that ought not to know trouble, but only the gladness of the morning of life, no doubt. She reeled just then, giddy with fatigue, and down came the lash, and flicked a flake of skin from her naked shoulder. It stung me as if I had been hit instead. The master halted and jumped from his horse. He stormed and swore at this girl, and said she had made annoyance enough with her laziness, and as this was the last chance he should have, he would settle the account now. She dropped on her knees and put up her hands and began to beg and cry and implore in a passion of terror, but the master gave no attention. He snatched the child from her, and then made the men slaves who were chained before and behind her throw her on the ground and hold her there and expose her body, and then he laid on with his lash like a madman till her back was flayed, and she, shrieking and struggling, the while piteously, one of the men who was holding her turned away his face, and for this humanity he was reviled and flogged. All our pilgrims looked on and commented on the expert way in which the whip was handled. They were too much hardened by lifelong everyday familiarity with slavery to notice that there was anything else in the exhibition that invited comment. This was what slavery could do, in the way of ossifying what one may call the superior lobe of human feeling, for these pilgrims were kind-hearted people, and they would not have allowed that man to treat a horse like that. I wanted to stop the whole thing and set the slaves free, but that would not do. I must not interfere too much and get myself a name for riding over the country's laws and citizens' rights roughshod. If I lived and prospered, I would be the death of slavery. That I was resolved upon, but I would try to fix it so that when I became its executioner, it should be by command of the nation. Just here was the wayside shop of a smith, and now arrived a landed proprietor who had bought this girl a few miles back, deliverable here where her irons could be taken off. They were removed. Then there was a squabble between the gentleman and the dealer as to which should pay the blacksmith. The moment the girl was delivered from her irons, she flung herself, all tears and frantic sobbings, into the arms of the slave who had turned away his face when she was whipped. He strained her to his breast, and smoothed and smothered her face and the child's with kisses, and washed them with the rain of his tears. I suspected, I inquired. Yes, I was right, it was husband and wife. They had to be torn apart by force. The girl had to be dragged away, and she struggled and fought and shrieked like one gone mad, till a turn of the road hid her from sight, and even after that, we could still make out the fading pleat of those receding shrieks. And the husband and father, with his wife and child gone, never to be seen by him again in life, well, the look of him one might not bear at all, and so I turned away, but I knew I should never get this picture out of my mind again, and there it is to this day, to wring my heartstrings whenever I think of it. We put up at the inn in a village just at nightfall, and when I rose next morning and looked abroad, I was where a knight came riding in the golden glory of the new day, and recognized him for a knight of mine, Sir Ozana le Cure Hardy. He was in the gentleman's furnishing line, and his missionarying specialty was plug hats. He was clothed all in steel, in the beautiful armor of the time, up to where his helmet ought to have been. But he hadn't any helmet. He wore a shiny stovepipe hat, and was as ridiculous a spectacle as one might want to see. It was another of my surreptitious schemes for extinguishing knighthood by making it grotesque and absurd. Sir Ozana's saddle was hung about with leather hat boxes, and every time he overcame a wandering knight, he swore him into my service and fitted him with a plug, and made him wear it. I dressed and ran down to welcome Sir Ozana and get his news. "How is trade?" I asked. "Ye will note that I have but these 4 left, yet were they 16, whereas I got me from Camelot." "Why, you have certainly done nobly, Sir Ozana. Where have you been foraging of late?" "I am but now come from the Valley of Holiness, please you, sir. I am pointed for that place myself. Is there anything stirring in the monarchy more than common?" "By the mass, ye may not question it. Give him good feed, boy, and stint it not. And thou, valuest thy crown, go get ye lightly to the stable, and do it even as I bid, sir. It is a perilous news I bring, and, be these pilgrims, then ye may not do better, good folk, than gather and hear ye the tale I have to tell, sith it concerneth you, for as much as ye go to find, that ye will not find, and seek that ye will seek in vain, my life being hostage for my word, and my word and message being these, namely, that a hap has happened whereof the like has not been seen, no more but once this 200 years, which was the first and last time that said misfortune strake the Holy Valley in the form of by commandment of the Most High, whereto by reasons just and cause thereunto contributing, wherein the matter, the miraculous fount has ceased to flow." This shout burst from 20 pilgrims' mouths at once. "Ye say well, good people. I was verging on it, even when ye spake." And we will pause there.